Thank you everyone for joining this Zoho CRM integration with Zoho Contracts session. I'm Arjun. I'm a product marketer with Zoho. I've been with Zoho for the past 5 years, and for the past 2 years, I've watched this product evolve from very close quarters. So this is one of our first webinars for the Zoho CRM users. So I'm super excited to share our story with you. So this will be our agenda for today. I'll first touch upon why we decided to build a contract management software, and then what we envision to do in this space. And next, we jump on to the main aspect of this demo, that we will cover how Zoho CRM users can become better users of CRM with this Zoho Contracts integration, right? And we'll then cover quickly how Zoho Contracts approaches contract management. What are the aspects that we are trying to achieve with this contract management software? And then we'll conclude the session with the Q&A, right? So throughout the course of this session, if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A tab on the left, right? So we have Helena and Akhil with us today. They will help me moderate this session. They are content writers for Zoho Contracts. So some of the cool content that you see on our website, they wrote those pieces. Yes, so I'll jump right in. Why Zoho Contracts? So if you look at it, contracts are at the core of all commercial relationships, and essentially every dollar that is entering or leaving a business is governed by a contract, right? But there are several challenges involved in contract management. These challenges have always been evident, right? So we at Zoho, we deal with a lot of contracts, and because we deal with a lot of customers, we deal with a lot of suppliers, employees. So we have faced a lot of these challenges. And over the years, we have heard from our customers that they are facing these challenges, right? But in the recent times, there are other factors that are driving adoption towards contract management, right? So though these problems have been evident, the adoption for Zoho contract management has been very minimal. But in the recent times, the adoption is going up. There are several factors that are driving this adoption. So the first factor is increasing complexities in global supply chains, right? So there are several reasons for this as well, right? The technology is evolving rapidly, and there are geopolitical tensions and uncertainties that are causing complex supply chain environments. And the second aspect is, irrespective of the industry that we are operating in, regulations are cropping up more often than ever before, right? Be it the GDPR, CCPA, across different aspects as well. So whenever there is a regulatory update that's coming out, businesses are forced to go and change policies in their organization. And whenever there is an organization-wide policy change, they'll have to go back to their contracts and change some of their clause languages. So this is driving a lot of adoption towards contract management softwares. And this fits in the context of our today's demo. So businesses today are forced to have flexible pricing models, flexible business models, because customers out there have a lot of options. So if we do not offer that kind of flexibility for our customers, we are just losing our competitive advantage, right? But the problem is, to provide a flexible pricing, you need to have a contract management process that is able to accommodate this flexibility, right? And this is also an important factor. Risk is an inevitable part of any business. But with the recent pandemic, the emphasis on risk mitigation is at an all-time high. A recent study made by World Commerce and Contracting has found that contract managers identify risk mitigation as their number one priority, right? So, and contract management is a critical piece to solve this problem of risk mitigation, right? And there are also other factors like the increasing trends of consolidation that we are seeing, the mergers and acquisitions that are happening, right? But for such mergers to happen, businesses need a forensic analysis of their current contracts, right? They have to know what exactly is their standpoint from a revenue perspective, from a compliance perspective. Only when they have such visibility, they're able to make such mergers and collaborations, right? So these factors are driving this movement towards contract management, and we are lucky that we are launching contracts at the right time. So we launched Zoho Contracts in July 2021. So we are fairly early in the market. So what we envision to do in this space is, we of course solve all these problems that we are talking about right now, but we also see more potential into contracts, right? We see contracts as dynamic documents that are touching every part of business, and this could actually evolve into growth engines, right? So our vision is to build a contract management software that holistically approaches this problem to facilitate better business outcomes. And how do we do that? We address these 4 aspects comprehensively. The first one is a very functional one, that is streamlining an individual contract lifecycle from its authoring to the termination part. But there are other factors like risk mitigation and improving governance that makes auditability easy. It makes the users accountable. It makes the entire system transparent, and it enables the admins with better control, right? And the last but most important part is the cross-functional integration part. Like I told you, every function has to involve in contracts. Whenever there is a deal made, if it's a huge deal, it's not only the sales team that is involving, there is a legal team, there's a compliance team. So all the promises that you make in the contract have to be fulfilled. So all these obligations need to be tracked and managed when it's handed over to the implementation team. So this will be the agenda of today's demo. We'll first start with how Zoho Contracts and Zoho CRM integration works and how Zoho CRM users can derive maximum value from that. And then we'll also touch upon these other aspects, how Zoho Contracts streamlines an individual contract lifecycle, how we mitigate risk, and how we improve governance, right? But before that, I'll show you how a typical contract lifecycle looks, right? Whenever a salesperson initiates a contract, right? So the legal associate or the deal desk, in most cases, there are templates, but in special cases, people author a contract. And then if there are deviations from the standard languages that we are using, it goes to an approval, it goes for negotiation. So this is how a typical contract lifecycle looks until it gets terminated, right? But in the absence of comprehensive contract lifecycle management software, these businesses or all businesses use multiple applications to address this process, right? They use a word processor to basically author the contract. Then they attach this Word document as email attachments and they send it over email applications back and forth. And then they have a third-party signature software integrated into their process. And then they manage all their metadata like the financial details, the renewal dates, all of that in a spreadsheet, right? And then when there are large volumes of contracts, they have to manage it in a Dropbox or Google Drive or a work drive, right? They use a document management software and they use a calendar to basically manage all the contract deadlines. So our aim is to replace all of these applications with just one application, which is Zoho Contracts, right? I'll quickly switch screens and I'll take you to the product. So the page that you see on my screen is the home screen of Zoho Contracts. So this is basically a personalized dashboard that gives the users a high-level overview of how their contracts are performing, right? So first we'll start with the Zoho CRM and Zoho Contracts integration. Okay, so and then I'll cover the entire lifecycle within Zoho Contracts, so you'll understand how this tool addresses the contract management problem holistically, right? So first thing is you will have to install this Zoho CRM plugin or the third-party integration into Zoho CRM, right? So you go to Zoho CRM, you go to the settings module, and then under marketplace, you will find Zoho, right? You click on Zoho and you search for Zoho Contracts, and then you install it. And at the time of setting up your integration, you can map your account fields to the counterparty fields in Zoho Contracts. So this is one of the key advantages of this integration. That is, since you already have the account information in Zoho CRM, you do not have to again enter it into Zoho Contracts. You can just map these fields to the Zoho Contracts counterparty. And similarly, the contact details in Zoho CRM can be mapped as the counterparty contact details in Zoho Contracts, right? And then you can actually set assignment rules. That is, if you have a legal team that manages your contracts, you can decide what type of contract should be assigned to who. And you can also map the fields for these individual contract types, right? Once the setup is over, once you have set up your Zoho Contracts integration, when you go to your deal record, so this is a deal record in Zoho CRM, you will find this request contract button at the top, right? So when you click on request contract button, a window opens and there you can choose the contract type that you want to create, right? So if you choose the contract type, I'm choosing product sales agreement as the contract type. The fields that are associated with this particular contract type will be displayed here. And if you notice, the requester is the user who is using the CRM and the requester department is sales. And the counterparty name is basically the account name in Zoho CRM. And the primary contact is basically the contact details in Zoho CRM. So once you enter all these details and send the request, a new contract document will be created in Zoho Contracts, right? And it will be assigned to the legal associate that you set during the assignment rule setup. And then if you notice, in the attachment section of your Zoho CRM deal record, there will be a lot of, there will be this contract document that gets created there. So the salesperson can also download this document, send it over an email, or view what exactly is the languages that are used in the contract, right? And one more value add is there is this related list called Zoho Contracts, right? So in the Zoho Contracts list, all the contracts that you've initiated from this particular deal record will be displayed. And the salesperson will be able to track the current status of the contract in Zoho Contracts. Like this avoids a lot of email back and forth. So this basically improves transparency between the Zoho CRM users and the Zoho Contracts users, basically the sales and the legal functions, right? And from here, the salesperson will be able to initiate requests based on the stage in which the contract is in, right? For example, if it is in the approved state, this could be actually sent for negotiation. So this approved contract could be actually sent for negotiation. If it is a negotiated contract, the salesperson can actually initiate it for signature. And at the time of renewals also, this comes in handy because the active contracts, when they are approaching expiry, the salesperson can initiate the renewal request right from here. This saves a lot of time for the salesperson and it improves your sales contract management efficiency, right? So this is the scope of our Zoho Contracts and Zoho CRM integration. We are seeing a lot of value add-on that we could bring in to the Zoho CRM users with our Zoho Contracts tool, right? So I'll quickly switch to the Zoho Contracts tool and I'll take you through how Zoho Contracts within Zoho Contracts streamlines an individual contracts lifecycle, right? So it starts from authoring. So to create a new contract, the user goes to the contracts module. The contracts module is basically a central repository that stores all your contracts, right? So this improves your visibility. And if you want to access critical information, you can use these filter and search options that will come in handy, right? So to create a new contract, in Zoho Contracts, you can either import your existing contracts, irrespective of the status that they are in. They could be in the draft state or they could be active contracts. You can also import expired contracts to just keep a track of them within Zoho Contracts, right? So this is the import contract option. So here you will see the status of the contracts that you're importing. And based on the status that you're choosing, you will be asked to fill in the meta details. You will be asked to attach the files that are required for us to manage your contracts for you, right? The other mode is to create a contract from scratch. That is basically from a contract template, right? So when you click new contract, you will be shown a window from which you can choose the contract type. So the contract type in Zoho Contracts is not just the contract template, it is a fundamental configuration that defines all the primary attributes of a contract. Like the approval workflow that needs to be associated with this contract, the intent of the contract. So all these could be attributed to the contract type. So here we have 13 predefined contract templates, some of the most frequently used business contract templates. You can also create as many custom contract templates as you want. For example, this e-commerce vendor agreement is a contract template that I created, right? Once I select this contract type and click on continue, I'll be taken to this contract creation wizard, which is basically a new contract form where you just fill in a couple of details, whatever details you would need to manage this contract, like the contract term, the termination notice period, if it is manual renewal or auto renewal. So all these details could be specified at the time of creating a contract. And after you enter all these details, when you click on save and continue, based on the contract template that is associated with this contract type, a new contract document will be automatically generated in the Zoho Contracts authoring section, right? So this automatically generated document will contain the default classes that are available in the template, right? But then the user or the contract owner can go on to this document editor panel. They can go to the clauses tab. And here the clauses tab lists all the clauses present in this particular contract type template. And if you notice, the contract owner can just unselect the clauses that they want to remove. If you notice on the right, the arrangement clause has been removed. Now I'm adding the arrangement clause and the arrangement clause gets added. So contract authoring becomes extremely simple. The other aspect is you can add multiple languages for the same clause, right? For example, if you have an NDA agreement with the customer will look different from an NDA agreement with a vendor, right? But most of the languages will still be the same, right? For these minor tweaks in the nature of the agreement, you don't have to create multiple contract type templates. You can just have the same contract type template, the same clause, but have alternate languages within them. This basically eliminates the duplication of contract type templates. So this is the advanced document assembly that we have added on top of our advanced authoring capabilities. I'm telling advanced because our authoring capability is powered by Zoho Writer. So Zoho Writer is basically an alternative to Microsoft Word. This is a full-blown word processor. So if you notice the formatting options that are available in any full-blown word processor will be available in Zoho Contracts as well, right? This is the result of 15 years of R&D that Zoho has made, and this comes readily available for all the Zoho Contracts users. So any real-time collaboration angle, the redlining, the commenting, and setting visibility for these comments, all of this is possible with Zoho Contracts as well. You can add your collaborators. You can set permissions for these collaborators. And if you notice, there is this permission called fill fields, right? So at the time of authoring a contract, there might be cases where the contract author will not be aware of a few parameters, right? They can just add a field. They can set the type of field that it is, and they can add collaborators with this permission. And these collaborators can just click on the field and enter the value. So once the contract authoring is complete, once the collaborators and the contract owner have finalized the draft, they can complete this draft, right? And after the draft is completed, it is sent for approval. So configuring an approval workflow for your contracts increases compliance and brings down the risk, because all the stakeholders involved in the company will be aware of the potential risks and the potential opportunities of contracts at an individual level, right? At an individual contract level, you are getting this visibility. So in Zoho Contracts, you can configure your own approval workflows. These approval workflows could either be sequential or parallel. So now I've submitted this contract for approval. And if you notice the contract details panel on the left, it automatically switches to the approval tab, right? So the idea is to not overwhelm the users with a lot of information, right? Only information that is relevant in this context will be displayed. So if you notice, the approval tab will only have information that is relevant for approval. The contract owner can view the approval workflow associated with this particular contract. In this contract, it is a parallel workflow. You can also configure sequential approval workflows based on the organizational hierarchy, right? And the activity section avoids a lot of email back and forth or Slack pings or click pings, because this activity section tells you what is the current status of the contract within this particular stage. So here, if you notice, you can understand that Anna has received the email and she hasn't viewed it yet and she hasn't approved it yet. I'll quickly switch tabs and show you how it looks if one of the approvers has actually approved it. So here Anna has approved the contract, but Jack is yet to approve it. I'll switch tabs and take you to Jack's profile. So this is Jack's profile. So in the personalized dashboard, all your pending approvals will be displayed. So here, Jack can open the document or the contract that is pending his approval. The approver can add contextual comments. They can add the text, select the text and add comments for that. They can also set visibility for these comments, right? And even at the time of approval, they can add a message for the contract owner, right? I'm approving this contract. So once the contract document is approved, it could be sent for negotiation, right? Traditionally, negotiation occurs over a series of emails. That is, this contract document is downloaded as an attachment over an email and it is sent back and forth. But the problem with this approach is when there are multiple rounds of negotiation, right? It becomes extremely hard to track what happened during an individual cycle and compare the changes between these cycles, right? So how we have addressed this problem in Zoho Contracts is we have provided controlled access for your counterparties. That is, when you send this contract for negotiation, you will be able to add the counterparty negotiators for them. You can set permissions for them, and then you can set a password. You can set unique passwords for each of these negotiators. And once you send this contract for negotiation, the counterparty negotiators will receive an email with the link to review the contract. And the best part is these counterparty contacts do not need a Zoho account or a Zoho Contracts account to participate in the negotiation. So when they click on this review contract, they will be asked for the password. So after they enter the password, they will be given a controlled access to this contract document. Because if you notice on the left, all the tabs that you see for the contract owner will not be available here. It is only the document editor panel that helps them suggest changes to the contract document, right? I'm emphasizing on suggesting changes because the counterparty negotiators cannot make any change without the contract owner knowing, right? So all the changes will be redlined, and the counterparty negotiators can collaborate in real time, right? They can collaborate in real time and then add comments. can set visibility for these comments. I'm setting permission for all of the people involved in this negotiation, right? So these counterparty contacts can collaborate and they can suggest changes, make comments, and at the time of review completion, the counterparty's primary contact can complete the review, and here they can specify a message to the contract owner. They can also show their readiness for signature, right? They can either check this box saying they are ready to proceed for signature, or they can proceed without checking. I'm proceeding without checking this signature. I'm submitting it for review. So once the review is complete, the contract owner, so this is the contract from which we sent the contract for negotiation. The contract owner will receive a review summary that gives you a summary of what exactly happened during this particular negotiation. So the number of changes that were made in this particular contract negotiation, the number of comments that were added, and their readiness for signature. So all these are captured in this review summary. And if they had entered a message at the time of review submission, that will also be displayed here. So now the contract owner can click on OK, accept or reject the changes that they have suggested. They can reply to or resolve the comments, and they can resend it for negotiation, right? So this process will go on until both the parties agree completely on all the terms. So when there are multiple cycles of negotiation, right, the contract owner will be able to see view previous cycles in the negotiation tab. So as I mentioned earlier, the negotiation tab will be displayed when you open the contract that is in the negotiation stage. So when you click on view previous cycles, all the previous cycles that this contract has gone through will be displayed. The contract owner will be able to view the document that was sent for a particular contract negotiation. They'll be able to view the summary on what happened in this particular contract negotiation cycle, right? A similar feature is also available for the counterparty contacts, that the counterparty contacts will be able to compare the changes, right? So they will be able to compare the latest version, which is on the left, with any of the previous versions, right? And they'll also have this option called negotiation history, where they will be able to view the document that was sent for a particular cycle, and they can also download it, right? So these are the features that are available in the negotiation stage. So once the contract is negotiated, once both the parties have agreed on all the terms, now the contract could be sent for signature, right? So at the time of signature or at the time of execution, Zoho Contracts is tightly integrated with Zoho Sign. So here in Zoho Contracts, you can add your signers. So you can add signers from your organization. You can add signers from the counterparty organization. You can also add other representatives such as witnesses at the time of execution. And you can set an execution workflow. That is, you can set a signing order for this contract document. I'm clicking on update and send. So when I send the document for signature, I am navigated to the Zoho Sign UI, where I can quickly drag and drop the signature fields, right? I choose the recipient. I drag and drop the signature field wherever I need it in the document, right? So I'm just dragging and dropping the signature field. I'm choosing the other recipient, drag and drop. So once I have dragged and dropped all the placeholder fields, I can send this contract document for signature. So similar, just like negotiation, the signers will receive a link with they can click on the link and open the document and sign in minutes, right? So contract execution is done in minutes. You avoid the print, email, sign, and fax cycles, right? So once the contract document is signed, it becomes active based on the effective date that you set at the time of contract creation, right? So when a contract is active, the active contract document is available under the agreement history. So if you notice, there is this original contract document with the signatures, and there is also a e-signature certificate from Zoho Sign. So this is basically to check the validity of the e-signatures that you have done on the contract document. So now we have actually looked at an individual contract's lifecycle from authoring to execution. But contracts never stay stagnant. It goes on through a lot of amendments, extensions, or renewals, right? So we have features to make this post-execution phase of contract management easy, right? So here we have this unique feature called smart letter templates. So what are smart letter templates is, a conventional template is where you have a skeleton and you just go in and customize the skeleton to make changes to the skeleton and to fit it to the current engagement, right? But in Zoho Contracts, we have a smart letter template where the admin configures contract letter, right? So at the time of amendment, for example, if the contract owner wants to amend the product sales agreement, they can just go on, start an amendment, edit the contract document like they're editing any Word document, right? So The difference is, since contracts are made up of these clauses as building blocks, any change that is made to any section of the contract, the tool is able to identify and it captures this change and it automatically generates the amendment letter, right? So for example, if you notice this amendment letter, the whereas clause actually captures the entire history of the contract. That is, when was this agreement originally entered into? And if there were past amendments, extensions, or renewals, that will also be captured under the whereas clause. And the now therefore clause actually captures all the current changes that were made in this amendment, right? So in this case, the late payments clause has been deleted and the taxes and withholding clause has been revised and reinserted as follows, right? So now the contract owner can just send this amendment letter for negotiation, approval, or signature, and the contract is read along with this amendment letter. So human intervention at the time of contract post-execution management is almost eliminated, and this avoids a lot of human errors, right? So this is the post-execution management feature. So now we have actually covered the entire contract lifecycle. The second aspect, or the next aspect that we are going to touch upon, is risk mitigation, right? Some of the features that we discussed until now, like the contract templates, the approval workflow, the peer review, all of these do mitigate contract risks. But one of the critical factors that results in contract risk is contract obligations, right? Unfulfilled obligations leave businesses with a lot of financial damage and reputational damage, right? So we have addressed that problem with a contextual obligation module. So contract owners will be able to track and manage contractual obligations right from within the context of the contract, right? At the time of authoring or at the time of execution, the contract owner can actually track these obligations. They can add it in the obligation module. So when we say obligation, any promise that you make in a contract is an obligation, right? So this promise could be either a task or a non-task. For example, if we say for a product sales agreement, if we say we'll train you with the product updates every year, this will be a recurring task, right? So we can add one-time and recurring tasks at the time of contract obligation addition. The obligation could also be non-task. For example, in a non-disclosure agreement, the promise itself is that we will not disclose this information. So even these kind of obligations could be tracked for compliance purposes, right? So I'll quickly switch to the activities tab. So in Zoho Contracts, we call approvals and obligations as activities. So if we go to the activities module, all the pending approvals and the pending obligations of the user will be displayed, right? So here the user will be able to quickly check the details of the obligation. If they want the context of this obligation, if they can quickly go to the contract document in which this particular obligation is sitting, right? They can also update the status of the contract right from the obligations module or the activities module. If you notice, there is a status field. The obligation owner can actually update the status of the obligation. The contract owner will be able to track these changes right from within the contract. And if we take a larger picture and if we notice how it looks for the admin can have a high-level overview of what is happening across all obligations in the business using the reports module. So that will be our next aspect that comes under improving governance, right? So contracts have a lot of critical information. Contracts have a lot of data, and Zoho Contracts with its advanced analytics helps you glean business insights or strategic insights from your contract data, right? So this is our reports module. So we have an exhaustive reports module with around 35 plus reports across different aspects of contract management. So the general reports basically groups your contracts based on different parameters, just statuses or contract types. And then there are these activity or milestone reports, which will help you understand where are your contracts stagnating. For example, if there is a contract that is pending for approval for a long time, you can quickly go to that particular contract document right from the table, and you can make changes to your processes, right? And then there are these performance reports. So performance reports will help you understand how your contract lifecycle process is performing, and then you can make changes to this, right? So one good metric to understand the health of your contract lifecycle is the cycle time. That is, how long does it take for a contract from its authoring to its execution, right? So you will be able to get insights like what is the average cycle time by contract type. You can understand what type of contracts are actually taking long time for execution, right? And then there are these reports like top contracts with long negotiation times. So this will help you revisit your negotiation strategies. If you notice, what are the clauses that are being constantly redlined during negotiation. You can make changes to those languages, and this can refine your contract management process. And then there are these clause-based reports. So clause-based reports come in very handy when you have to make organization-wide policy changes. So like I mentioned earlier, there could be regulations that are cropping up, and these regulations will translate into organization-wide policy changes, right? But to effectively implement an organization-wide policy change, the admin needs to know how many contracts actually has this particular clause, right? Such an impact study can be quickly done with Zoho Contracts because all of that information is presented to you in a table format. You will quickly, for example, if this organization-wide policy change affects your waiver clause, for example, you will quickly know that this waiver clause is present in 60 contracts, and clicking on this table will actually display these 60 contracts that has this particular clause, right? So this makes change management extremely simple. This makes impact study when you are making a change extremely simple. So similar insights are available across obligations, counterparty, and users, right? And when we talk about analytics, we also have this personalized dashboard that we saw earlier. So if you notice this dashboard, the intent is to quickly let you know what you should be working on. So as soon as you come to Zoho Contracts, the dashboard will tell you what are the contracts by their status, what are the contracts that are approved that you would send for negotiation, what are the contracts that are negotiated that are actually could be sent for signature. And if there are pending contracts that are also displayed here, and all your pending activities such as approvals and obligations will be displayed. Since contracts also contain the financial information, you will be able to forecast how your business is performing, and you will also be able to track how your contracts are performing across different time filters, right? And at the time of termination also, if you provide the financial details, Zoho Contracts will be able to tell you how much gain or loss have your contracts incurred. So if you notice the monthly calendar on the right, it helps you plan your months better. All your contract milestones will be displayed here. All your overdue obligations, your expiry notifications, your upcoming renewals will be displayed here. So you never miss a renewal opportunity. So if you look at it from a sales angle, or if you look at it from a revenue perspective, right? Contract renewals are one of the lowest hanging fruits for revenue expansion, but you will be amazed on how many renewal misses are happening because there is no efficient way to manage your contracts, right? There are these in-app and email alerts in Zoho Contracts. So if you notice, all your contract milestones will be displayed in the in-app notifications. You will be notified of all your contract milestones. You will also receive email notifications for important milestones so that you never miss any contract milestone, right? So this is the analytical part that we're talking about. But when we talk about the broader governance, since contracts have critical information, it becomes important to track what activity is performed by whom, right? There should be an activity tracking that makes auditability extremely simple, right? So in Zoho Contracts, we have activity tracking on multiple levels. For example, if you go to the users module, if you choose a user and click on the activity tab, all the activities performed by Anna will be displayed in chronological order, and it will also show in which contract this particular change was made. So also, if you go to that individual contract, activity is tracked at an individual contract level also. There is this activity tab that displays all the activities performed in this particular contract, right? So then there are these activity logs. It makes auditing simple. For example, all the changes that are made to the admin console is displayed under the admin audit logs. And the user access logs actually tells you who are the users who are logged into your CLM system right now and from where are they logged in. And since you have the ability to export or download the contract data, all that logs are also available under the activity logs, right? And like I mentioned earlier, since contracts deal with a lot of critical information regarding your business and your counterparty business, there should be features that enable you to protect all this data, right? So one of the common clause that we are looking at across a lot of industries is, at the time of termination, the counterparties want the original party to remove all their data from their system, right? So without a feature intended for this purpose, it becomes extremely hard to accept to such demands, right? So what happens is, in Zoho Contracts, we have given data protection settings feature. So when you enable the data protection feature, you can actually choose the fields that contain the personal information of your counterparties, and you can actually restrict your non-admins from downloading all the personal data or the data of the counterparties, right? And since you have the data protection settings enabled, if you go to the counterparty module, all the counterparty contacts will be displayed here, and all their contracts will also be displayed under the all contracts module. So that could be, so in a lot of these recently coming up data protection regulations, there is this clause that says you should be able to stop processing your counterparty data on demand, right? So if your counterparty comes and tells you that you will have to stop processing my data, you can quickly do it by just going on to the counterparty module. You can choose the contact, click on the more option, and click stop processing data. With just a click of this button, wherever this information is present inside your CLM system, the tool will stop processing this data, and this data will become anonymized, right? So even at the time of deletion, the tool will ask you if you would like to anonymize this data, right? So if you want to delete a contract, counterparty contact, and if you want to anonymize the data, in all the places, since we track all the activity, if there are activities that are performed by the counterparty contact in a particular contract, the personally identifiable information will be replaced with a number so that you are compliant to all the data protection regulations in the geographies that you are functioning in. So this data protection regulation is also one of our key strengths as a CLM. So with that, I've actually covered the aspects that I decided to touch upon in this demo. Thank you so much for attending this session.